Grab a pint, grab your lineup. We're about to tap into fantasy. Welcome back to Tap Into Fantasy, the podcast with a professional fantasy mind and an amateur beer palate. I'm Lance Gandy. You can find me on X at LG_fantasy. Today's episode is a trip out west with bold predictions, a few cheap jokes, and a beer that tastes like your morning cup but hits like a nightcap. We're breaking down the NFC West, where the 49ers are still built to bully the league if Brock Purdy holds up. Sam Darnold is steering the Seahawks ship and hoping not to run it aground. The Rams are trying to squeeze another year out of Matt Stafford's back before it completely disintegrates. And the Cardinals are basically praying Kyler Murray doesn't log into Xbox mid-drive. Riding shotgun is a Panther Island Eos, an imperial double coffee stout that's rich, roasty, and smooth enough to keep me talking even while looking at the Rams injury report. So before we call out the sleepers and expose the busts, we've got a tradition to keep. Raise 'em high. May the best drafts of your past be the worst of your future. Let's tap in. So it's time to dive into the Panther Island Eos. Let's check in on Untappd, where every person with a Wi-Fi connection suddenly thinks they're Gordon Ramsay with hops. Welcome to the Scrolls of the Booze Realm. Okay, here's the first review. More bitter than my preference, Eos is nonetheless quite creamy and coffee forward. Aftertaste is harsh and hoppy, but mouthfeel is very nice. I find myself holding it before swallowing to enjoy that part of the experience. That's what she said. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Holding it before swallowing to savor every inch. Buddy, that's either how you drink a stout or how last call got way too interesting in the back of the pub. Okay, so I'll throw out another wild review later on in the episode. Please take a second to smash that subscribe button and turn your fantasy team into the one thing you don't suck at. Sorry, that was a little harsh. I love all of you. Okay, are you ready to pop the top? Opening draft time, the podcast segment where beers go in and dignity comes out. This week, like I said, I'm tackling the Panther Island Eos, a double coffee stout that tastes like chocolate and espresso had a very polite meet cute. Got a beer with the courage to endure my commentary? Send it to tapintofantasy@gmail.com, and maybe it'll just make the big beer board on the website. So last episode, I tried the True Anomaly Ambrosia Reserve and dubbed it Blackberry Rosé Gone Rogue. This fodder-aged saison is, sour enough to make your eyebrows do a workout like mine were, the whole bottle, with blackberries, preserved lemon, ginger, lime, and rooibos tea all vying for attention. So I think you should follow me on Untappd, Tap Into Fantasy, for more tastings, brutal honesty, and shameless beer selfies. Okay, so like I've said, the Panther Island Eos is an imperial double coffee stout. I'm a coffee fiend. I drink it every morning and most afternoons also. As you could probably tell from my beer choices, I can be a little bougie with my coffee. Like Folgers tastes like sludge. It goes nowhere near my mouth. Only the best for these taste buds. So naturally, I enjoy me some coffee stouts too. So let's pour this thing and figure out if it's Folgers slop or that French press goodness. So I have my Festival of Darkness tulip glass from Tupp's Brewery. It was a festival for stouts and porters, so I thought it made a lot of sense today. This one's a can, so I don't even need my beer opener. All right, there goes the pour. Not much head on this one. I don't know if I'm just getting that good at pouring or if it's just not a big head beer. Perfect amount for this glass. All right, let's go ahead and give it the old college try. Wow. Yeah, that tastes like straight up coffee. Like black coffee. Like it's it's definitely bitter. Hmm. Yeah, they hit the nail on the head with this one. That's just like a big coffee uppercut straight to the throat. Mostly a sipper, but it tastes much less than the 10.5% ABV it has. I mean, this would be dangerous. Definitely a best ball draft banger because you just don't have much downtime in best ball drafts to take long sips. You have to be quick about it. Like if you drink this in your home leagues, when you have 3-minute timers on each pick, you could be seeing double and actually accidentally take Brian Robinson instead of Bijan Robinson. Okay, well, I'm going to try to pace myself with this through the episode, and I'll give my pour score at the end. Now on to something a little less stout, the NFC West. You can find my full rankings at tapintofantasy.com. I now have PPR half and standard ranking done. I'll be adding them to the website in the next couple of days. So I've gone over each of the 4 AFC divisions, the NFC East and North, so go check out those episodes if you haven't. This episode is the NFC West, so the Cardinals, Rams, 49ers, and Seahawks. Let's start with the Cardinals. So Kyler Murray, obviously so fun to watch scramble. Just watch him in this video. His little legs looking like Roadrunner from cartoons, weaving in and out of dudes 150 pounds heavier than him. Even with his tiny superhuman running ability, he was just QB 14 last year in points per game, and it was a pretty bumpy ride getting there. Like he had a 59% bust rate, which is games below 17.37 points. He was just behind Geno Smith in consistency rank at 14. The Cardinals weren't worried because they added absolutely nothing on offense. Like you can take that one of two ways. Kyler finished QB 14. Why would that change in this environment? Or that the continuity with the same coaching staff, an underrated offensive line, and better chemistry with Uber prospect Marvin Harrison Jr. will make them a better unit in 2025. Also, Kyler's schedule this year is just straight cake, so I tend to think it'll be better. I have him at QB 8 this year, a nice pick in the mid rounds of your leagues. So nobody is going to say, hey, this guy just took James Conner at the 4-5 turn. We're all doomed. Okay, I exaggerate a little bit, but Conner just isn't a sexy pick. Like, he's a safe pick. Although I have a few questions about how many more touches Trey Benson gets, and if Conner keeps up his passing game usage from last year. He also tends to miss a few games every year, and he's going into his age 30 season. He's missed 11 games the past 4 years for the Cardinals, and injury risk just goes up with age. It's not shooting for the moon when you draft him. Like, he was RB 14 in points per game last year. He's always productive, though. An underrated loss for the Cardinals was Clayton Adams this offseason, their former offensive line coach. They always just had a really buttoned-up scheme in the running and passing game because of him. If you pair Conner with a high upside pick in Travion Henderson or Kenneth Walker, I could see that being a pretty nice 1-2 punch. I don't love the Conner pick. It just seems kind of like a small win, big loss type pick, given that he's going right now as RB 18. But he's not going to nuke your team. I do think Trey Benson is a nice flyer deep in drafts. He's been hyped up by his coaching staff this year. He had a 9.76 RAS score at the Combine and ran a 4.39 40. And like I mentioned before, James Conner always misses a few games. I watched his film from last year, and he just seemed a little indecisive and had terrible vision, but the middle part of the game should be better for him going into his second year. Man, I was burned so bad by Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. I started looking up wide receivers on LinkedIn instead of ESPN. He was a generational talent at Ohio State. Like, what the hell happened last year? He just wasn't used creatively by the offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing. Like, according to Matt Harmon of Reception Perception, Harrison was used more than 80% of the time on the line of scrimmage and over 80% outside. Like, he was charted as having 4 in-space opportunities all year. Like, that's just ridiculous. Everything is just harder when you use him like that. Also, given Kyler's size, he's just not able to access some parts of the field. Like, check out this graphic. This was Kyler Murray through week 6 of last year, but it's really always been like this. He doesn't throw to the middle of the field, the place where Harrison Jr. gets the most separation. He's so small, he's just staring at his 6'7" lineman's knees if he looks in the middle. Harrison Jr. was also below average in contested catch rate, which makes sense given his lack of length. Nothing at all has changed this year with personnel or coaching. So why do we think he's going to go from wide receiver 42 in points per game last year to wide receiver 19, his ADP on ESPN? Even giving him a year 2 bump, that's just way too much for me, so avoid this trap. There's really nothing else at receiver here for redraft. Michael Wilson is a pretty safe bet in best ball to beat his late round ADP, but there's really no ceiling case for him. So being low on Marvin Harrison Jr. has one upside, and that's being the high guy on Trey McBride as my numero uno tight end. But Lance, even over Brock Bowers, are you crazy? Yes, I am, but I also have my reasons. Yes, the Bowers' usage has been concerning in preseason. I think he may lose a few snaps a game to Michael Mayer because they like his size in the run game. Go check out Hayden Wink's preseason Week 3 breakdown on X at Hayden Winks. Bowers and McBride were already neck and neck, and this just broke the tie for me. They already basically scored the same amount of points last year, and McBride has some really nice positive touchdown regression coming. Like, Mike Clay is one of the most respected guys in the industry. Here's his expected fantasy points chart from 2024. Given their usage, McBride should have been far and away the top tight end last year. He now has the easiest tight end schedule in the league lined up. Like, draft him if you like being happy and winning. This episode is powered by Dubby Energy. It's my go-to for a clean boost with zero crash and zero jitters, whether I'm grinding out drafts or just need that mid-afternoon push. No junk, no guilt, just focus. Hit the link in the description and use promo code TAPINTOFANTASY for 10% off. Dubby brings the energy. You bring the winning picks. Now we head to the land of broken dreams and broken backs, to the Los Angeles Rams. This whole Matt Stafford thing has been disconcerting, to say the least, for the whole offense. The team buys him a freaking Airstream so he can rehab his back at the facility. No idea what was going on in there, but it's not good. He's had very little practice time with the team this summer, and while he is an old, grizzled veteran, so he doesn't necessarily need it, it would bring me less anxiety if he could just get some reps with the other grizzled old veteran they brought in, Devontae Adams. I had Matt Stafford in my home league last year as my second QB in a Superflex, and it was as aggravating as dropping your toast, and of course it lands jelly side down. I'm a jelly man. I don't do butter. He finished as QB 30 last year. He was behind Daniel Jones. He was behind a hobbled Kirk Cousins. He was unusable, yet now he's going as QB 21 on ESPN after barely having a camp because of a crappy back at 37 years old. Tell me how that makes sense. That's rhetorical. It doesn't. So don't choose him. A falling tide sinks all ships, so you have to be lower on his playmakers as well. Kyren Williams was third in rushing attempts last year. He also had half the amount of 20-plus yard runs as Antonio Gibson with 2. He also tied for third in the league with 5 fumbles. So that kind of sums up the Kyren experience from last year. A plotter on the ground, but got enough work to finish RB8 in points per game. His efficiency fell off a cliff last year, going from 5 yards per carry in 2023 to 4.1 last year. So he's obviously relying on the offense to get him close to the goal line to punch it in. Obviously, with Stafford's back, a ticking time bomb, the offense could be an issue. Kyren relies so much on volume that if he has just like a 10% decrease, which is possible with second-year backup Blake Corum gaining trust with the coaching staff, he would be a high-end running back 2 at best. However, he did just get the bag from the Rams, so he could still be the bell cow, but it's a risk. I have him at RB13, just kind of splitting the difference. Corum isn't even being taken in redraft, but definitely seems to be the RB2 in the backfield, firmly over Jarquez Hunter. He's basically a Kyren clone, so he would be productive if there was an injury. A really nice best ball flyer, since he goes much later than similar RB2s on other teams. So Puka Nacua is a tough one to evaluate this year. Like, on one hand, he had a monster target share last year, led the NFL in yards per route run at 3.56, and was 85th percentile in success rate versus man, 90th versus press, 90th versus zone. That's a top 6 receiver, however you want to dice it. But he's dealt with injury issues every year in the pros and college, is very likely without Stafford for some of the year, and has more target competition in Davante Adams. He's such an awesome talent, and he's clearly getting better. Just a unique bruiser at receiver when most of the league is finesse speed guys. I had him ranked at wide receiver 4 before Stafford sneezed and broke his back, so I moved him down to 6 based on that risk. Davante Adams is going to turn 33 before the end of the year. That's ancient in wide receiver years, but he still looked very good last year. He was tied for wide receiver 10 in points per game in just a broken offense in the Jets. Like, here are some highlights Matt Harmon pointed out at Reception Perception. He had over 40% of snaps in the slot. He was very successful separating on in-breakers, 89th percentile in success rate versus press coverage, but had some signs of decline versus zone. Like, that sure sounds like a player aging like a fine wine, but this Rams team just seems so fragile. Like, Stafford's back, Davante almost 33 years old and had some signs of decline. Puka and Davante have a long injury history, and the offensive line is average, but feels like a house of cards ready to topple. I have him at wide receiver 15 because there's a high ceiling. It's in there somewhere, but there's a low floor as well. So I think Tutu Atwell will be the wide receiver 3 in the offense to add some juice. So he's a decent bet in best ball in the late rounds for some spike weeks. I think, though, if one of Adams or Nacua got hurt, Jordan Whittington would replace them. Like, he showed some nice flashes as a rookie, so I love differentiating my best ball teams and taking some of him. He could be a waiver wire addition during the season also, so keep an eye out. McVay has always been obsessed with finding a tight end for mismatches in the passing game. He thinks he found one in rookie Terrence Ferguson, but he may be more of a 2026 play and just kind of be sprinkled in this year. Big Rig Higgs, or Tyler Higbee. I just found out that was his nickname, so I had to shout it out. Higbee is the returning starter for the team. Either one is a fine enough dart throw and best ball late. They're not going to be relevant for redraft out of the gate. It may be like a gross timeshare between them two and Colby Parkinson as a blocking tight end. If you're still listening and haven't bailed yet, do yourself a favor and hit subscribe. It's the only button you'll push this season that won't come back to haunt you, unlike starting that one running back who swears he's day-to-day for 6 straight weeks. Plus, it guarantees you a front row seat to more fantasy takes and bad beer analogies than anyone really asked for. Alright, it's time to dive back into the scrolls of the booze realm with another Untappd review. This is a review from good old Missouri City, Texas. That's dang good. No coffee bitterness, thick mouthfeel. You get the coffee, but the roasty malt shines. Oh yeah, celebrating yesterday's stout day. The only cold one in my fridge that I hadn't had before, and it turns out great. Sorry, I had to do that accent. That's just what came to my mind for it. But thick mouthfeel, like, do you want to make it that easy again? So I won't get into that. But the bigger deal is, how the hell do you miss Stout Day? Amateur move. I've had it circled on my calendar since March. Hell, I even left cookies and a barrel-aged milk stout for Stout Claus. Alright, let's forge ahead and cover the San Francisco 49ers. So Brock Purdy put on his big boy pants last year and turned into somebody I didn't know he could be. Just a driver of the offense. No Christian McCaffrey meant he was the one dictating the offense, as the 49ers were actually around average in pass rate over expected in 2024. Like, that's a huge shift. They'd always been around bottom 5 in that stat, running the Shanahan scheme. With George Kittle as the only target he could really count on throughout the year, Purdy was 7th in QBR and 10th in points per game. White Boy has a little giddy up too. He was 11th in rushing yards among QBs and had 5 touchdowns on the ground. He has solid offensive line, a presumably healthy Christian McCaffrey, and some nice targets in Kittle and Ricky Pearsall. Add on to that an easier schedule, and I love Purdy at cost. So tell me, how do you even rank a dude whose running back finishes the last 6 years go like this? 72, 1, 2, 39, 53, 1. Like, he resonates strongly with the saying, if you ain't first, you're last. So Christian McCaffrey is a mystery wrapped inside an enigma. The 49ers always withhold as much info as they can on injuries. It's just frustrating. But they've been saying all camp that he's fully healthy. He was pretty basic on his 50 carries after coming back last year, ranking right between Kamani Vidal and Jaleel McLaughlin in yards after contact per attempt at 1.7. I'm just not sure how much of his 2023 burst is coming back off of that injury from last year, and he'll definitely see less touches than his 339 in 2023. He's also just a high injury risk, so I've gotten a little exposure in best ball just because I've drafted so many teams, but I'm staying away in redraft. With that injury risk, Brian Robinson becomes a little bit of an intriguing pick, the newly acquired backup, although I think he'd just be a grinder with a McCaffrey injury and Garindo would be the passing downs back. They just have limited upside because of this, but he could be an end of bench stash or a decent best ball pick if he slides. So I was all in on Juwan Jennings coming into this year with the Brandon Ayuk injury, Debo being traded, and Christian McCaffrey being a big fat question mark. But those vibes have been crushed over the last few weeks. He ran an ugly 4.72 40 at his combine, but what he's elite at is parking his big booty in front of a cornerback and blocking them out to reel in contested catches. He had an elite 60% contested catch rate. He was 11th in yards per route run. A nice profile on a team that needs some juice at receiver, right? Jennings has missed all but 4 training camp practices with what they're calling a calf injury, but he also has stated he wants a new contract. Like, nobody knows whether the injury or the contract stalemate is keeping him out. Now there's rumors he could be cut or put on IR. It's just ugly. Like, hopefully it gets sorted out before week 1. If it does, I still like him at his current price of wide receiver 48. Ricky Pearsall is the main beneficiary of all this. He had an injury earlier in camp, but has been impressing lately. And do the names Robbie Chosen and Sky Moore get you excited? If Jennings misses time, that might be who starts opposite Pearsall. Look, he's an explosive athlete with a first-round pedigree, so he should be a lock on this team for a pretty nice target share. I would make him a priority in home leagues if the Jennings situation isn't ironed out. So I've been staying away from Brandon Ayuk. He doesn't even go that much later than the other 49ers receivers. If you have an IR spot, you can put him in, I guess, but he looked terrible, like even before his injury last year. I'm just not expecting much in 2025 from him, but, you do you. Who I am expecting a lot from this year is the best tight end in the NFL, George Kittle. Like, check out the graphic. Per @SF Data Niners, Kittle was the most efficient pass catcher in 2024. Not among tight ends, among everybody. He had .72 expected points per target, 4 times better than Brock Bowers at .18. He was far and away the best tight end in yards per route run at 2.91. So why don't I rank him tight end 1? Because he ran 380 routes last year. Brock Bowers was at 564. Trey McBride ran 496. Kittle's also a long-haired weapon as a blocker, so he does much more of that than the other 2 elite tight ends. With McCaffrey back and the addition of Brian Robinson, I don't think he gets above 400 routes run again, but I still love clicking his name at the 3-4 turn. It's a big drop-off from the big 3, so for me, it's either big 3 or wait for the later rounds. If you've enjoyed today's mix of fantasy football and beer rambling, drop a review for the pod. It helps more than a night of sleep after a bad draft and a strong coffee stout. My liver and my lineup both thank you in advance. All right, last team in the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks. I unfortunately have to be in on the Sam Darnold in Seattle experience because of my home league dynasty team, but it's a tough place to be in. By most accounts, he had an incredible year last year, but also by most accounts, he turned into a pumpkin when it mattered most. He doesn't have Kevin O'Connell to scheme guys open or Justin Jefferson to route dudes up, but he does have Jackson Smith and Jigba, and only him. The new play-action heavy scheme of Clint Kubiak should help draw in defenders so Darnold can hit Smith and Jigba on crossers or the occasional Torrey Horton or Marquez Valdez-Scantling deep shot. But make no mistake, this is a running team. The Saints had a negative 5.3% pass rate over expected last year. Expect much of the same for the Seahawks. I don't think it'll be as ugly as early in his career, but he again has one of the worst offensive lines to deal with. Like, he could pumpkin again at some points this year. Somehow, he's going ahead of Geno Smith on ESPN. Like, don't make that mistake in your league. The running backs are where the fantasy points are made on this team. I've cooled off a little bit on Kenneth Walker as Zach Charbonnet continues to get love in the preseason. I'm still above consensus. I think both can hit in this offense, and it may be good for Walker's health to have less touches every game. Walker was hounded last year. Just watch this clip. With 20 tackles for loss on 153 carries. Definitely wasn't for lack of trying. This scheme should clean some of that up so he can use his 4.3 speed to have just more explosive plays. Like, he would be going higher, but injuries have been a problem. And he was limited with a foot injury in camp. He's been practicing the last week or so he should be ready to roll in week 1. Charbonnet has been healthy and crushing it by all accounts, so he should push for around 40% of touches in this backfield at least. He's a no-nonsense runner who has good size and vision. With the injury risk of Walker, he's one of the best handcuffs in the NFL and should have some standalone value regardless. He's a nice bet at RB41 on ESPN. He'd be a RB2 if or when Walker is injured. So Jackson Smith and Jigba broke out last year with over 1,100 yards. He's known as mostly a slot player, but actually had a higher yards per route run on the outside in 2024. With the condensed sets the Seahawks will run, it sort of blurs the lines between out and in anyway, but he's definitely a man coverage beater. He had a 31% target rate versus man, 10th among receivers. I don't doubt his talent, I just doubt the downgrade at QB and the still bad offensive line. But there is no DK Metcalf taking away targets, so he'll have a steady stream. In PPR, I don't mind the pick. I just don't see the upside case for him. I don't think there's going to be that many passing touchdowns to go around, and he's not a red zone monster anyway. It saddens me to say, but I think at this point, Cooper Kupp is a better real-life player than fantasy asset. I think he's going to do the dirty work on running plays and can catch some underneath passes, but the juice just up and left him last year. He's going to go too high in your home league because the manager that, listened to one podcast episode to get ready for the draft sees the name Cooper Kupp and thinks he struck gold in the 7th round. Let them make that mistake. Torrey Horton and Marquez Valdez-Scantling are late round best ball dart throws. It's anyone's guess which one comes down with a few long bombs throughout the season. I'd put my money on Torrey Horton. So I don't think a tight end on this team will be relevant in your home league drafts, but keep an eye on the usage for rookie Elijah Arroyo. He could be useful on waivers at some point during the year. He's a nice second or third tight end target in best ball though. He was hurt for, much of college, but is just a straight burner that could end up being the second target in this offense by year's end with all the questions behind Smith and Jigba. All right, so I hope you got something useful out of this NFC West breakdown. I'll do one more sip of this Panther Island Eos, and I will make my conclusion. Okay, so I think this goes number 4 right in front of the Delirium Tremens. I really enjoyed it. So my final pour score for the Eos is Bitter Bean Backlash. It's like a red eye with alcohol, which I find to be a winning combo. But that's going to do it for this episode of Tap Into Fantasy. If you liked what you heard, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps the show find other degenerates like you. Hit me up on X at LG_fantasy. Thanks for tapping in, and until next time, happy pours, happy scores.